Remote started?
That's what I'm saying.
I think we gotta go in through the front here. I'm not sure.
Well, I know that was the front over there.
Yeah. Well, guess we will find out.
What they have to park on
11 on the dot. Only a couple minutes early.
Right.
Maybe one of these two doors. Morning. Yep, we're here to have a meeting with Chief Potts. Yes, ma'am. Very good. Free gun locks.
I'll go ahead and take you upstairs and I'll let the chief know that you're here.
Very good.
Like to have a seat in here?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I love these damn pen songs. Tough books are ridiculous.
Good, how you doing?
Chief Potts. This is the president owner of Ocon. How's it going, sir?
Matthew Schreib, I'm one of the supervisors.
Okay, what can I do for you?
So, we got a couple issues. I briefly spoke to you, I believe it was Thursday.
Yeah, you got the complaint, and the complaint is not done, and I know we talked about I can't make any judgments or any kind of decisions on anything until the complaint is done. So
Right.
I'm right in the middle of it, so I'm assuming this is for what?
So, we're just kind of wanting to go over a couple things, make sure that everybody here involved is on the same page. Maybe give some educational points, because maybe some of your officers may not be familiar with what our job is, what we do, what we can and can't do.
Okay,
There's been a lot of interference going on here,
okay.
from, your officers. See, it just pulled up here.
And this has to do with the complaint, or is this separate?
So I'm gonna have to make a whole nother complaint on two separate officers. That one I'm really not concerned about, but I'm more so concerned about Sergeant Williams and how he's conducting himself. And then, probably talk with you, in regards of potentially filing a criminal complaint as well against him.
Criminal complaint.
Yeah.
So, if you're filing complaints and doing all that, then what is the reason? And I'm not trying to be difficult, I swear I'm not.
Right.
But what is the reason for talking to you then? Are you trying to avoid that, or what? Because I can't stop, like I said on the phone.
Right.
I can't stop you from doing that. You can do whatever you want to do.
I really want to prevent this from going to court.
Okay.
Okay,
And if it does, it does.
Right.
I,
And like I said, Lederman's is fully on board. I don't want to go through that. One, I ain't got the time.
right.
I got two children at home that at the end of the day, I have to take care of them. You know what I mean?
But if we've done something wrong, then we need to correct it, and if going
Right.
to court and doing that is the way to correct it, that's what we have to do. I'm trying to get the expectation from you, what you think is gonna happen out of this.
So, the biggest thing that I'm looking for with Sergeant Williams is, one, I feel like there needs to be some sort of de-escalation and training as
Okay.
for him, for sure. And then just educational points,
Okay.
you know, because ultimately at the end of the day, no, we're not law enforcement, but we share some of the same qualities
Right.
and goals when it comes to the general public and ultimately fugitives from justice, people that have outstanding warrants. That's why I feel that this meeting's important. That way you can see, one, how serious we are, but two, that, you know, we're on the same side here at the end of the
Okay.
day. We got to be able to depend on each other. But ultimately, it's kind of turning into a, you know, ultimately a safety issue for us, but it could be a safety issue for your officers as
Okay.
well. You know what I mean? But I just want to make sure that everything's transparent. You know, give some educational points, because there are certain things that maybe you aren't even, you know, familiar with or don't
Okay.
know about. Are you familiar with the what a bail enforcement agent is?
Yeah.
A bounty hunter.
Why don't you tell me?
So, in essence, I mean, we hate the term,
Yep.
but we're bounty hunters, right? We're licensed through the Iowa Department of Public Safety. Do you know what a PD2 card is?
Tell me.
Okay. So, this is what a PD2 card looks like. This is mine personally. If I can get it to open up here. So this is a PD2 card. They're digital now. They're not actual hard cards. So this allows an officer on scene to scan and validate if the person is a legitimate bail enforcement agent. And then from there, it'll tell them what agency they're licensed with and so forth, and again, if their individual credentials are valid. If it's not valid, or if it's been fraudulently made, or if they are unable to produce this, it is a Class D felony under Iowa Chapter 88. It's equivalent to impersonation.
Okay.
There is a lot of people in this industry, here in Iowa especially, where people are not running under this, even though they should be. I've seen it plenty of times. We do have surety bond insurance, you know, like I said, our agency certification as well,
Okay.
through the Iowa Department of Public Safety and our liability insurance.
Okay.
So this is what a typical case will look like. The bondsman sometimes will give us a copy of the bond, otherwise they will write it down. So this is for Amy Wusk. Okay, we'll get everything that's listed on that bond application and so forth, and then we'll get a mug shot, basically what the defendant looks like, description, and then we'll get a copy of the warrant as well. Per our policy, which is one of my personal policies, my guys are required to have at least a photocopy of the warrant on their person at all times. That way they can present it to law enforcement along with their credentials as well.
Okay.
So there are certain things that, you know, we can do, you know, that for say law enforcement can't do. You know, like for example, for a bond agreement and contract, per their contract, their house is subject to search. If that means, you know, we got a forced entry to search, we can search. It wouldn't be breaking and entering or anything like that. However, we've run into times and points where they do want to file a complaint with PD for property damage, which is their right. But then it turns into, well, you signed the contract, you're going to have to sue civilly for property damages. But it seems like we run into this problem of, so like I was explaining and what's in the report there, is the fact that we were legally allowed to be there at that residence and then we were told to leave and that it's harassment. When it comes to the search seizures and us being there on the property, we have full legal right to be there on the property and to search it. We can stay there, we can wait for the defendant to show up at home. There's no time limit in framing at which where we, have to be done. It's not like a time limit for like a traffic stop for you guys. I guess what I'm getting at is that throughout this entire case here, this has probably been one of my most frustrating cases I've worked in a long time, because I just honestly feel like I'm not getting any support, because I did put a call into service last night on behalf of one of my agents, because my agents called down. Sergeant Williams was the only sergeant working apparently last night, and more than 3 times he denied call of service.
What kind of support are you looking for?
So we requested a warrant check. So one of my agents was posted up outside on the road.
Yep.
I basically told my guys, as far as this case goes, watch and observe at this point until a meeting takes place and until actions are taken. And your guys' investigation process is done. But one of my agents came across a female that matched Amy's description to a T. Obviously, because we're not law enforcement, we can't stop an ID. Besides, that would be an infringement on
But you
the
couldn't
rights.
go contact her and ask her?
So he did.
Okay.
He asked, and she said her name was Dakota.
Who is also listed on one of the bonds related to this.
So now here's the kicker with this case, which we don't normally get this. So we have 2 separate ones for Robert. Wilson? Is it Wilson? Robert Wilson? Yeah, Robert Wilson. So these are power of attorneys. So his bond has been revoked. So we do have a revocation, and everything that's on his bond application is the same information for Amy. Same cosigner, same address, the whole 9 yards. Those are certified copies from the clerk of courts. We have to carry those with us to even put handcuffs on him. Once we do get him into custody and do a transfer of custody, we have to have the jail sign off on one of these. And it basically goes over Iowa Code 811.8. And as far as the surrender of defendant and transfer of custody. And this is just a receipt of the defendant, confirming that the jail did take custody of the defendant. So then this would go back to the bonding company. Now, we're not the bonding company. We're the guys that the bondsmen hire, and we go out and we do the dirty work.
Gotcha.
But like I said, it's frustrating everything that we have been dealing with, especially with Sergeant Williams.
So, and keep in mind, we do have an active complaint against Sergeant Williams.
Yep.
And I'm not discussing Sergeant Williams. If you want to add to that complaint, you can.
Mm-hmm.
Get channels to do that.
Okay.
How did we not help you that night? Or are we obligated to help you?
So, there's a fine line of obviously what you guys can involve yourselves
Yep.
with and getting into, whether it's policy or law on your guys' end. For example, us going into a house and searching a residence, that may not be something that you guys are obligated to do.
Right.
I guess last night, for example, a call of service was put in for a warrant check or a wanted check on an individual that looked like our defendant.
That is us. Explain to me what a warrant check is.
So
From your perspective.
So from my perspective, it would be where the officer would go, make contact at the residence, speak to the individual in question, and confirm their identity, run them, make sure it is them, and if it is the defendant or the person that is actively wanted, then the officer would take custody of that individual.
Okay. If we go and do a warrant check, this is hypothetical, and somebody else answers and they say, no, they're not here, what do we do?
I guess it would be at the officer's discretion then, if they're comfortable going in to the residence, if the individuals consent to search and are like, yeah, you can come in, they're not here, whatever.
Or don't consent.
If they don't consent, then that's where we're kind of at a draw, and we stand and surround the house or just watch it, and observe.
So last night, and again, I'm going back, what are we obligated to do by law, or is this a courtesy, or tell me what we didn't do and what we violated or what we should have did because of what regulation?
So as far as last night, I mean, it was more of a,
I'd say last night was more of a courtesy than anything.
yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, last night would be more of a courtesy deal, but it was more of an unprofessional deal with him again.
I got you. I'm following.
But as for the other day where he told us to leave the property, that is more, it can be looked at as a civil issue
Mhm.
between us and the co-signer, but at the same time, we are legally allowed to be there. at
And
any
that
time.
is the complaint, right?
Well, that and
That's-
I guess it
That was
has-
the complaint incident, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
and I guess it was more so along the lines too, though, of the fact that one, yes, he told us to leave, but two, obviously defamation. That's a civil deal, so that's not nothing that I mean. I'm sure that there's probably some sort of disciplinary actions that can, be
And
taken
like we
place.
talked on the phone,
Yeah.
all the stuff that, and this is, you're making me go against my, what I usually do. I just wait until everything is done. I give my people the opportunity to do their job,
Mhm.
and they can report back to me. Majority of what we're talking about can be corrected,
Mhm.
whether that's discipline, whether that's talking, whatever it is, it can be corrected.
Right.
So, but we're not at that point yet.
Right.
And I'm kind of, what else do you want?
I guess I would just like to see anytime that we deal with a Ankeny patrol officer and we call and ask for assistance or come across each other, there's just some sort of line of professionalism
Okay.
and respect.
Yep.
And
That can be easily done.
and as far as like just simple education for
Mhm.
them, again, we're not law enforcement, but we do have a presence of, we do have authority.
Okay.
We do wear body cameras, we wear duty belts, we wear a badge and a vest just like you guys at the end of the day.
And basically a lot of things too, you've got case law, like Taylor versus, we go under Taylor versus Taintner.
Well,
Or no, we go under.
So we have state laws and regulations that we have to follow. We have the Supreme Court ruling of Taylor versus Taylor that you're mentioning. And then to even govern my guys even more, to make sure my guys are in check, there's things, because I've been doing this for, like I told you, 10 years.
Mhm.
There's things that I put in our personal employee handbook that aren't even regulations or anything for us to follow, per Iowa Chapter 811, Iowa Chapter 80A, Iowa Chapter 121, or Taylor versus Taintner. So before any of my personnel are allowed to force entry into a residence, they have to have a supervisor on scene,
Okay.
100%. And so this is our employee handbook here. And it specifically states, it goes over every single chapter, that was just said, as far as Iowa Chapter 121, 811, ADA, and Taylor versus Taintner, as far as, what else governs us and what we can and can't do.
Because there's things like at the federal level, like with us, Taylor versus Taintner, but there's things for your guys' job too, like Pennsylvania versus NIMS, stuff like that allow you to do your guys' job to the maximum capacity that you're allowed to. And now there are times where you can also put in policy like what we do for what's acceptable, what's not.
And there have been times and points where at least in my career of doing this, where we have ran into law enforcement agencies that highly frown upon us because of the fact that there are things that we can do that you guys can't do.
Yeah.
I've literally been called a criminal with a badge,
Mhm.
a legal criminal, and it's like, it's people's 8th Amendment right to bail.
Yeah.
That's why I took this job. I've ran across officers that have taken oath to serve and protect their community and the Constitution, but they've never read it. And that's where I think the disconnect is that just the lack of education and knowledge.
Because there's a lot of times, so like one of the things that we do is we call the dispatcher every time we were going to a private residence to make that transparency that, hey, we are out here and stuff like that. And we've had law enforcement, like, again, with Sergeant Williams, show up and tell us to leave. And they're like, it's one of those where, granted, if it's a third party address where we're showing up, it's not on our bond application, but we got a tip off that they might be there. I mean, that owner is more than justified in telling us to leave.
Mhm.
Like, we can't just sit around and stay there. The only thing we can do is, if we have a hunch, we can sit out on the public roadway and see if anything happens.
Okay.
Now, I mean, there's been good encounters with law enforcement, you know, because
Yep.
ultimately there's been times and points where they're like, well, guys, this is your scene. What do you need from us? Help us hold a perimeter. We're getting ready to force entry. Or I've had law enforcement agencies in small towns like Ankeny here. Hey, we got a canine. We got a drone. Ooh, hop the drone, you know, and it's like, I'm giddy, you know, but it's
But there's no obligation.
no obligation.
No obligation, nothing says you have to do this.
No,
It is a courtesy for us to.
right, just like it's a courtesy for us to give you guys that courtesy call
Yep.
into dispatch and let you
Gotcha.
guys know, like, hey, look, we're going to be in the area of your city, your town, you know, conducting a warrant search
Okay.
for an individual, and just, you know, kind of go from there. And then we advise and call once we do leave the area as well.
Yeah.
And again, that's in the employee handbook as well. There's nothing that mandates or regulates us other than me enforcing that for my guys.
I know when I worked for Phoenix, they had Bell's bondsman.
Phoenix
And,
Security.
No, I worked for Phoenix PD.
Oh shit!
Yes.
You're a ways away.
And they talked about, we used to do stuff, but one of the things that came up with Phoenix PD is Bell's bondsmen go into the house at all hours of the night,
Mhm.
staying. So are you can you stay in the house?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can legally stay inside the house.
Stay inside the
I
house.
can sit down on your couch and just watch TV if I really want to. Like,
And I
metaphorically.
Guess,
but-
yeah, I hear what you're saying. And I guess the question was always, when does that become
Harassment.
Let me use another word. When is that excessive?
So-
When does it become excessive to you guys when you do that?
When they sign their bond agreement,
Yeah.
they relinquish those rights.
Okay.
So
So it never becomes excessive.
it never becomes excessive. Now, the bond contract becomes null and voided once they are in custody.
Yeah.
So once a case is wrapped up and the defendant is in custody, there's absolutely no reason for anybody to go back to that residence at that time.
We can, let me just say this, we can take care of professionalism, we can take care of education if needed, we can take care of all that. If you're not satisfied with the service you get from us and you think that it's something that you need to do some kind of civil action against the city or the police department, I can't stop you from doing that and say that once again, and you might not ever get the level of satisfaction that you want.
Right.
That might not happen.
Right.
And it might not be within my range or my responsibility to do.
Right.
Right.
But, like I said before, I'm gonna reiterate this. We can fix professionalism, we can fix education, we can make sure our officers know what we can and can't do.
Mhm.
And how they should treat people.
Yeah.
Because there have ultimately been times, what I was trying to get back to was, I've called it a dispatch and I've had PD show up and they're like, we don't even know what you guys do, we don't
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
what is going on.
Oh yeah. And there's been times and points in my career, you know, going into those small towns like, is it Carlisle? It was right outside of Carlisle. This was probably about 5 years
Yeah.
ago. and we're in an intense standoff. Like, you know, we have our rifles out. You know, the defendant's inside barricaded. He's got a long gun, and PD's rolling up on scene. The next thing we know, we're being drawn on, and it's like,
Because we don't know.
whoa, you know,
Yeah.
exactly.
Just don't know.
And then we kind of explain the situation. Then it's like, okay, we're taking over. You can follow behind us now because
Yeah,
the
it takes
situation's kind of
forward.
taking a turn, and it's like, perfect. I'm stacking up on you. I got your 6.
Yeah, because we had one here in Waterloo, or not Waterloo, Des Moines here. Oh my goodness. Davenport. There we go. In Davenport, where PD showed up with like 4 different officers. They're like, you guys just kind of hang behind. This guy is known to fight, known to.
Oh yeah, that was that recent one, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
David.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was pretty cool. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I mean, he wasn't at that location, but we ended up tracking him back to the warranted address, and
Okay.
we ended up forcing entry. Sergeant
Yeah.
showed up on scene, and he's like, "Good job, guys." And
Yep.
it's like, "All right, well, appreciate it," you know. But those are the kind of interactions that make our job fun.
Gotcha.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
And easy as well.
Yeah. Like I said, I strive to have that, you know, professional relationship and courtesy with law enforcement and respectful. You know, like I said, like last night, you know, there were more than 3 different calls within a 2-hour period for an officer to come out. Sergeant Williams did show up on scene. He walked to my agent's vehicle and said, "Do your fucking job. I'm not helping you."
He said, "Do your fucking job."
That's what my agent says. I asked him if he did have his body camera, and he said no. I told him, you need to get your body camera
Okay.
mounted on your equipment and vest for documentations and for legal purposes for situations like this.
Okay.
So, the next time he does not, he's not going to be allowed to go out and work cases until that is corrected on our end. The other situation and incident in particular that we have documented my interaction with Sergeant Williams, like I said, as far as, you know, being told
That's
to
the
get off.
complaint, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As far as him telling me to get off property and everything else, I guess my biggest concern is he, you know, like I said, defamation, but walking into the residence after the residence has been cleared by us, we're getting ready to leave. The homeowner didn't give him permission or consent to go in. We didn't ask.
Why were we out there?
So
Did the homeowner call us?
So yes, the homeowner ended up calling because we're applying that pressure, and they're ultimately getting sick of it.
Right.
Well, then tell us where your son is. Now, I did file another complaint with you guys. I went through the process. I submitted evidence of a call recording, screenshots, and evidence
Yes.
proving that these guys are in fact helping their son and Amy. You know, so I'm like, this looks like aiding and abetting, accessory, or harboring at its finest. Like, here's evidence.
And there's even like Facebook posts and stuff that are just public that they are trying to sell stuff for them to get them money. And they have admitted that it is to get them money.
Yeah. So we had a private informant that day in particular, working on setting up a buy for a homemade car trailer. In at which Amy was the direct person in contact that was selling the trailer. And then from there, she referred the private informant to go to our registered address, the 323 address. I don't remember the road name, but to go there, meet up with Dad, or her stepdad, and that he would take the private informant to the trailer to look at it so he could purchase it, right? So just that alone right there tells that they're in communications. And then we have it on body camera, you know, that he's making phone calls and he's talking to Robert and Amy as well.
And I'm not doubting what you're saying or anything like that, but the complaint has to do with Sergeant Williams'
Yeah. So
professionalism and
Yep.
you know, professionalism.
yeah, ultimately, at the end of the day, professionalism, but like I said, like.
So we have no dispute in why you're there or how you got there or
Yep.
that's.
Yep, and again, there's a call log and trip of service, of us going out there in
Yeah.
advance, letting, dispatch know. Sorry
And
about
again,
that.
and I keep saying this, I sound like a broken record, but we will, if there's needs correction, we will correct Sergeant Williams's professionalism, his knowledge, everybody's knowledge in the department of what you guys do. That is, I say it's easy, but it pretty much is.
Yeah, and it is. It's easy. I mean, it's as easy as going online. I mean, there are certain things, on Google,
Right.
that you can't trust and believe.
Right.
That's why you just as well as I do. .gov.org. Websites are your best bet and your best friend when it comes to legal stuff, especially when it comes to state and federal
Yeah.
regulated things. But it's very easy.
And I know, and again, I'm not questioning you why you guys do what you do or how you get to where you need to get or what information you get to say that you belong at this. That's what you do.
Mhm.
I'm here to handle Sergeant Williams.
Yeah, and like I said, my biggest thing was obviously, like you said, professionalism, but going into the residence, that's really concerning because he just barged right on in after my last guy walked out. He barges right into that
Right.
residence, doesn't even go in and clear it to make sure we're out or to make sure that our defendant ain't inside or anything. He just walked right in, and it's like, what's your probable cause? I mean, you weren't invited, asked to assist us. We can most definitely invite your officers in. Once we have entry, we can be like, hey, you're more than welcome to come in with us. And he wasn't invited or approved by the homeowner to enter that residence. I'm like, all right, he's definitely power tripping. This is a huge concern.
Yeah,
I
we can look into that too.
so, do you have anything you want to add?
No, really. I've got a few small points that I had.
Yeah.
And again, we are not in the business of creating friction between us and you or us and them. It's not what we're trying to do.
Right.
There will be some disagreements.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Most definitely.
It's one of those where it's more just a professional standard because I've had it before where I've got buddies in law enforcement and stuff like that, and I call them like, hey, don't know if you can do this or not, can you run a plate? And they're like, no, absolutely not, that's against departmental policy and legal issues. It's like, okay, fair enough. But
Yeah.
it's just something as simple as that. We're like, hey, I don't feel comfortable doing this, I don't know what the law is on it exactly, stuff like that, and that's perfectly fine. But it's one of those where showing up, yelling at our guys to leave when there's no legal precedence for us to leave at that
I
time
get it.
is what the issue is. And it's
Yep.
one of those that we're ultimately both here to protect the community
Yeah.
in different aspects of the area.
I guess also another really big concern of mine is the potential retaliation out of all this.
What do you mean by that? What do you think
The
we are
reason-
gonna do?
Well, the reason why, whether it's a traffic stop or something like that, the reason why I say this is because he made it very personal.
Mm-hmm.
He says, I am personally going to find something on you. And it's like, good luck.
Okay.
Like, we're not doing anything illegal. Well, you need to leave now. And it's like,
Okay.
well, all right, guy, like, we'll leave because you're threatening an unlawful arrest.
Right.
But in any other circumstances, like if I could turn back the hands of time, I honestly probably would have let him arrest me, especially if I didn't have kids to worry about at home. And then the whole thing would be, a whole different angle. But I handled it the professional way. I'm like, all right, we'll stand down,
Mm-hmm.
we'll retreat, we'll collect, we'll consult, we'll talk, we'll pass on the information to the proper people and go through the proper channels, we'll make a complaint, and that's where we're at. Like I said, everything in my power as far as, talking to the proper channels, filing, the chain of command, talking to another sergeant, then commander,
Yep.
and then I believe I spoke to a detective and then it became you.
Yeah.
But some of my guys honestly are scared to work this case now.
Okay.
And I can't force them to work. I mean, when it comes to bail enforcement, it's a 1099 job. Like I'm not paying these guys hourly, when they go out. It's ultimately voluntary work or contractor work, where they get to make their own schedule. They get to pick and choose. All right, yep, I want in on this case, or there's 10 agents going out. The pay's not worth it, because it's getting divided up type deal. But versus the security side, because we're also a security agency. Now, security I can regulate hours and so forth, but it just sucks because there are guys that have put in time, effort, money, and resources, and they're now potentially at a loss on this, along with the bonding company, because of the simple fact that they're scared of being unlawfully arrested.
Okay.
And the other big thing too is this whole meeting is that our bonding company, they're not happy about what's transpired. They have been given these recordings as well, just for transparency's sake, like, hey, why is this person not, like, why are you not here? Why is this person not getting looked into? This is why, and they're losing out on money just like our agents are losing out on their money as well.
Yeah. And like I said, I will have to file another complaint as far as the other two officers. There's been some sort of, I don't know, miscommunication as far as which officers went out to storage mart. 'Cause we got a tip that Amy and Robert were living in their storage unit on, what is it, South Ankeny Boulevard Storage Mart?
Okay.
Or no, they were staying at PDI Storage Mart.
Okay.
Carol, who is Robert's mom, has storage units out there, but Amy and Robert were staying at PDI Drive, I think it is.
Okay.
Anyways, two officers went out to the Ankeny location, spoke with the storage mart's manager of the property there, and because they called in for a suspicious person, and they believed it was Amy. And I guess these officers told them, well, call us if they show back up, and they showed them my business card and everything else, and they were like, well, don't call these guys. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, I mean, you're more than welcome to call law enforcement, but to tell them not to call us is encourage them to not interact with us or not work with us. Like, they straight up told them to not work with us. And that's like,
And they made it as a point, and then the storage bar manager reached out back to you.
Yep.
And said they would not even conduct business with us.
yeah, which I've got the calls recorded, so every single call, every interaction, personal vehicles and everything, because I'm a resident of Ankeny, but everything that I do in my day-to-day life, whether I'm working bail or not, I feel like I have to record. And that's for my safety and protection, but it feels like at times the people that I feel should be protecting and serving, I have to watch out for.
Okay.
And that's kind of how I'm feeling now. Like, I'm waiting for that day where I jump on from, the on-ramp of 96 and, jump onto 35 when your units are sitting there and they're going to pull me over for whatever reason they can find. And that's just where I'm at now. I feel like I'm waiting for it. I'm waiting for that retaliation, because there were other officers there on scene that day, and he's just like, I'm gonna make an example out of you. I'm gonna find something on you, and it's like, okay, yeah.
Okay.
But
Yeah, we can handle that.
and I appreciate that, and I really appreciate you taking time and sitting down and talking with us, for sure. It's definitely been professional.
Yeah.
Yes.
I feel like it's been professional on our end and yours as well. I really do hope that, in the long run, we have a better interaction with each other, well, with other officers.
Yeah.
Because hasn't been pleasant, you know,
Yep.
but,
Is ultimately, like, bad actions can lead down through the grapevine too.
Yeah.
And I have seen it myself, not even in the PD status, but working EMS. I have watched bad people come into power and they just ruin everything.
takes one bad apple to
Spoil
spoil
the
the bunch, yeah,
Yep, no, I know, I get it.
so,
But I feel like this has been a very productive meeting too.
I'm glad you guys came.
Yeah, we're glad you came too.
yeah, absolutely, alright.
Anything else?
No, sir, again, I appreciate your professionalism and taking time, sir.
No worries. no
Thank you.
worries.
Thank you so much,
All
sir.
right, thank you, man. You guys be safe out there too.
Yeah,
too.
you as well, man.
I'll take that.
Yeah, I got this.
Biggest thing also, real quick,
Yeah.
when officers do interact, especially with my guys, cause I mean, it's, like I said, there are certain things that are not regulated under ADA or anything like that. But I encourage all law enforcement, ask for those PD2 cards.
Okay.
You know, just to validate, hey, are these guys real? Because if not, then you got somebody that's impersonating a bail agent in your community.
And it actually runs under the same laws. Police.
It's a class C felony for ADA, I mean, it's right there. I make my guys aware, like, once you sign up, you know, just because you can, you know, because you have to submit to Galls your credentials before they'll sell you a badge. Yep. Once you leave, if you get caught outside of here, you know, performing any duties or wearing this, like, you could potentially get charged. So,
Okay.
alrighty, Chief, I appreciate you, sir.
Yeah, no worries.
You have a good rest of your day, sir.
You guys want to get out, right?
Yeah, it's out the door.
Out the door downstairs.
Very good, sir.
I appreciate it, thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you again, sir.
Be careful.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right.
I think it went really good. I, look forward to that.
Thank you.
Look forward to that, email or call back. And see where it goes. I appreciate you coming down for this.
Yeah.
You definitely brought up some good valid points and questions.
Well, it's just one of those. It's all at the end of the day, it works.
I'm going offline now.